Good evening. Welcome to 24 Hours of Reality. This is an annual event that the Climate Reality Project uh, considers every year so the people uh, is warned about the climate emergency around the world. We share all the information, all the scientific information that is giving us the importance of what we are doing to our planet. It's very important to know these facts all around the world in order to change. But let me introduce you to someone who trained me in 2018 in Mexico City. Is the ex-vice president of the United States, Al Gore. He has some words for you. Let me share my screen so um, you can see what I'm talking about. Are you ready? Give me a second. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Al Gore, and I want to thank you for joining us today for 24 Hours of Reality Countdown to the Future. As all of you know, we're living through truly extraordinary times, and if you're like most people, you look at these challenges that we're facing now, the climate crisis getting worse, COVID-19 pandemic, structural and institutional racism, the challenges to the operations of democracy, and you ask yourself, what can we do? How do we overcome these truly existential threats that are connected? And how do we build together the sustainable future and the just and fair future that we want and deserve? Well, the presentation you're about to hear and the discussion you're about to join is about these questions. Your host is an incredible climate reality leader that I personally have worked with. And through their presentation, you'll learn the science behind the climate crisis and why it is having such a devastating impact on the ecological balance of our planet. You'll also learn how the climate crisis is connected to the COVID-19 pandemic and is connected to the broader injustices and inequities, not only in the U.S. where I'm located, but in places all around the planet. Just as important, you'll learn that we have the solutions, and you'll learn how we can work together to solve these crises, starting with a green recovery and with a just transition to clean energy and the technologies that can make our world better in every way. You'll learn what you personally can do to make a difference and to help us create the future that we want and that humanity deserves. So before I hand you back to your host, I want to say one other thing. Thank you for being a part of this global conversation. The truth of our circumstances is very clear. We have to solve the climate crisis, and we have the solutions we need today. I know that we can solve the climate crisis. We have the political will. You know it's a renewable resource, but it's really because of people like you who are ready to commit the time and energy and attention and stand up and fight for a better world. Because of you, I know that we will succeed. Thank you.
Well, so now I am Carmen Arzate. I want to repeat you, that's my name. We are more than 30,000 leaders, climate leaders all around the planet. So let's begin explaining what's happening to our planet. As you know, we can see now the planet from space. But as soon as we discovered how beautiful our planet is when we started thinking about what we are doing to it. We started thinking about all the possibilities that is a huge ecosystem that if we affect it, obviously all the climate in the planet is going to change, and it's exactly what is happening now. So this presentation will be divided into three parts. Must we change? Can we change? Will we change? So let's see. Must we change is the first part. As you can see, this blue line that you can see is the horizon of our planet. This atmosphere is the one that determines if life exists or not in our planet. Because all the components, all the chemical components of the atmospheres, they need a specific balance in order to hold life. At the very beginning of this process in which the planet was formed, we didn't have oxygen. So, and when we didn't have oxygen, life was not possible in the planet. Later on, with the stromatolites in the oceans, oxygen was produced, and the oxygen concentration increased until we reach 35% of oxygen in the atmosphere, in the components of the atmosphere, and is when life was possible. We started seeing vegetation and, I don't know, cells at the beginning that became more complex with the time, but we depend completely on the balance of all these chemical components in the atmosphere. Whatever changes bring extinctions and bring meaningful changes in the way life is held in the planet. So, what is causing this global warming? So, when we have directly the sunlight, these are infrared waves or light waves, and they hit the planet as soon as they get here. And usually they escape back to the space before, after warming a little bit the planet, and all this heat turns back to the space. But now that we have this accumulation of gases in the atmosphere, especially carbon dioxide, methane, and some other greenhouse gases, they stay, they don't allow these light waves go into space, so they stay in the planet, and obviously they heat up the atmosphere. This is what is really happening to our atmosphere. And the equivalent is 152 million tons of man-made pollution, warming pollution every 24 hours. This is the reality that we are facing. And obviously, we are producing these emissions from a lot of means, like the permafrost that is thawing, in coal mining, oil production, crop burning, forest burning. Everything is affecting and is heating up our atmosphere. So we are living a very delicate time in in the history of civilization. For example, in this graph, you can see is these are billion metric tons of carbon. Considering the beginning in the year 1850 until the present. So we have all these 10 billion metric tons of carbon in the atmosphere. They continue accumulating because the carbon emissions haven't been stopped yet. So, but and we can see in this graph how uh, in 1880 until the 1930s, the temperature was normal. But in the 1940s, especially when the atomic bombs were detonated, the global warming began. And a lot of industrial activity and technological activity. And the more we produce, the more we extract natural resources to the planet, the more we heat up the atmosphere with this accumulation of gases in the atmosphere. There is a 22% chance that the year 2020 will be the new hottest year ever because we have seen it in this summer all around the planet. And obviously, at the beginning of this millennium of this century, is when we really noticed that the climate is changing because we have seen a lot of episodes of extreme weather events. So the last 20 years have been the hottest, but specifically the last 5 years have been the worst. The year 2016 has been the worst so far, but as I told you, we expect that the year 2020 will be the worst ever recorded. And obviously, with this heating of the planet, we are seeing terrible uh, terrible events of heat waves all around the world. This is in Miami. And this is in Australia. You can see the hot spots, the extreme heat waves that we have seen in Australia. In Australia, in Ghana, in a lot of places, in a lot of countries all around the world, they are having now extreme weather events. For example, in Europe, it was the hottest year on record. They reached temperatures of 113 Fahrenheit degrees in a lot of cities, Germany, Poland, and all these beautiful countries that we have in Italy. All of them are suffering from these heat waves. But the extraordinary thing is that near the near the Arctic, we also have very high temperatures, almost 38 Celsius degrees were reached in June of this year in the Arctic. So as you can see, these are anomalies all around the planet about the warming, the global warming that we are suffering today. And that global warming in the atmosphere goes to the ocean as well. This warming is absorbed by the oceans. And now we have that the ocean temperatures are rising too. Not only the atmosphere, but also the oceans. And 2020 is likely to set a new record again, as I told you. So as the temperatures increase, obviously there is more moisture in the atmosphere, and this moisture is absorbed by the ocean, and then it generates rains, heavy rains. This is the hydrological cycle. First the evaporation, then the precipitation, and finally the water returns to the rivers and then to the oceans. And obviously we can see now, it's evident on May of this year, we saw this in Philippines, where at least 578,000 people were affected by the typhoon Bong Fong. So in all the planet, we are seeing how we lose structure, we lose lives, all the hurricanes become more dangerous, and they destroy more infrastructure in the places where they hit. For example, in this country, for example, in May the 21st of this year, obviously with these extreme weather events, they are losing the crops, the trees, all the vegetation, everything is destroyed, and the people must be displaced. This is causing migration all around the world. In India is happening too, and now the situation is worse because we now we have the COVID-19 that is affected to these vulnerable people all around the planet. So, and the poorest people is affected, as the Holy Pope Francis said that in the year 2015. The poorest are the most affected. Some of them do not even pollute the environment, but they receive the effects of global warming. It's an ecological devastation everywhere. Is the worst thing that we have seen. This is causing climate injustice all around the world. And these are the precipitation anomalies that we can see. In the 1950s, we have just a few events of extreme weather. But as the years have passed, in the year 2016, for example, now we have 175, near 175 events of extreme weather. And now we have water bombs in different countries. Lately, we have seen this in Mexico City. We have water bombs, and obviously they produce simultaneous flooding around the world, as this happened in Tennessee in February 15 of the year 2020. These torrential rains caused severe floods, and it's happening in many places of the United States and of the planet. Flooding is caused by these extreme weather events that we have. Specifically, some vulnerable areas in the United States are more they are suffering more for these events. There are about 10 counties in the United States that have been seriously affected. And obviously, in this year, US farmers, they were not able to plant anything in 20 million acres in 2019 due to floodings. Is happening all around the planet. So globally, floods and extreme rainfall events now occur 4 times more often than in 1980. So every 10 years we have an increase, and this increase is multiplying all around the planet with this increase. Almost or nearly 4 million people in India and Nepal, they have been displaced because of these floodings around the world. And what's happening to these people? Sometimes they have to go to other countries and ask for help. Some others have the infrastructure to help them and the people to help them, as it happens in China, where 700,000 people were affected by flooding in several Chinese provinces. So they are losing lives, they are losing structure. And for example, in Kenya, 100,000 families were displaced by flooding this year as well. And it's not only the floodings, the hurricanes, and these extreme weather events, but it's also happening in other parts of the world that droughts are becoming a common thing every day. Because in some parts, as I told you, we have more humidity, more moisture in the atmosphere, but in some other parts, the solar radiation is absorbing, because of these chemicals in the atmosphere, they are absorbing the humidity of soils. So it's causing droughts all around the planet. And obviously with the thawing of permafrost, the thawing of the glaciers, so we are having now problems about water. For example, in Europe, because these glaciers are disappearing and it was the main source for them to get water, now their aquifers are suffering. Now they are running out of water, and obviously this is going to take them to a terrible crisis. And it's happening not only in Europe, it's happening in many countries all around the world. As you can see, this is in Poland. In India. And as these hot weather events happen, as these droughts happen, obviously they produce fires. Where there is no moisture, fires are very easy to produce. As it is happening in the United States this year, it happened in Arizona, in California, in Washington, and then in a lot of places around the United States, we have seen these fires, these terrible fires. They destroy a lot of acres, a lot of areas around the cities. And in Australia, they have the same, and it's not only the structure, the lights, also the species are dying and suffering because of these fires. In this picture, we can see how in Brazil, all this is the Amazonia. In this place, obviously, there are a lot of fires, and they are these fires. Some of them are produced by men because they want to change the soil use, or in some other areas because of the droughts, these fires begin by themselves. But now, I think in Brazil, we are going to have a savanna. Instead of having a rainforest, we are going to have a savanna. Obviously, it's going to change, and because it was an important part of refreshing the planet. Now that we are losing the Amazonia, we are going to suffer more, and it's going to continue changing the climate all around the world. In Greece also, there are a lot of fires. So all around the world, all the extreme weather catastrophes are increasing, all of them. Temperatures, droughts, fires, floods, mudslides, and storms all around the planet. They have increased seriously until the present. And also all these glaciers are disappearing very fast, as you can see in Greenland in 1935, and now in the year 2013, there is almost nothing about these glaciers. They are disappearing rapidly. And obviously the weather is going to change more. The high temperatures are going to rise more rapidly when all the thawing of the glaciers finish. We expect that the temperatures increase dramatically. This is the Antarctic ice loss that we have. We lost some in between 1979 and 1998. And now between 2009 and 2017, we have all these loss of ice mass. And it's increasing very fast. This is producing sea level rise. In some countries, they are affected because of the population they have, as we see it in Kolkata. But in some other parts, they are going to be affected because of the infrastructure, economical infrastructure they have, as it is Miami. Because it's a touristic area, obviously they have a lot of hotels and a lot of facilities that are very expensive. Besides life, they lose a lot of structures whenever we have these extreme weather events, and because of the sea level rise. So in some parts you can see in the streets that we have some species, marine species, floating in the streets, in the avenues of Miami. And also there are a lot of cities all around the world that are very vulnerable to the sea level rise. In some countries, in some islands, obviously they need to buy new land to move all the population, as it is the case of Kiribati. It was the first nation to purchase land in another country to house its climate refugees. As I told you, the refugees and the displacement of these people is causing some other problems. So climate change will likely lead to food and water shortages, pandemic diseases, disputes over refugees and resources, and destruction by natural disasters in regions all across the world. So it's a huge crisis. It's not only the heat waves, it's the sea level rising, it's the social implications that they bring. So climate change is also a medical emergency because as we have these extreme weather events, obviously we are more vulnerable to a lot of sicknesses, viruses, bacteria, and infections all around the planet. And the more we destroy nature, the more we are exposed to diseases in many kinds, as we have seen it in the COVID-19. There are a lot of deaths caused per year, for example, in these areas, in India, in China, and in Russia as well. Per year, they have about 150,000 deaths. So that's a lot of people dying just because of the climate change. And in China, for example, they have discovered that the COVID-19 cases areas with elevated levels of nitrogen with this particulate pollution, they are more vulnerable to get the COVID because obviously these areas with a lot of pollution in the air, they affect the respiratory system that we have. So we become more vulnerable to the COVID-19. And for example, in the United States, it was seen that the most affected races are the Black people, the Afro-Americans. They are dying more because of COVID, because they live near these industrial areas, very polluted areas. And also we now risk losing 50% of all land-based species in this century, only on land, plus all the species we are losing in the oceans. So the economical loss is terrible. Social problems, structural problems, sicknesses, and everything. Everything is being affected by global warming. So, must we change? Obviously, we need to change. We must change. If we love life, we need to change because this planet is beautiful and the conditions that make possible our life in the planet, we need to keep them. We need to keep that balance. And can we change? So let's see what has happened. We have the solutions at hand. You know, the scientists had warned about this global warming more than 40 years ago. So a lot of scientists, a lot of conscious people, they are trying to design new technologies, clean technologies that are renewable in order to reduce the carbon emissions all around the world. So what kind of solutions we have seen? For example, the projections in the year 2000 worldwide, the wind capacity obviously is the aeolic energy, that's what I'm talking about. The production of this kind of electricity, um, by the year 2010, they thought that it was 30 gigawatts by 2010. But the reality is that by the year 2019, this capacity improved 22 times. This is the global wind energy capacity in megawatts. Can you see? Since they established these new technologies, the eolic energy, obviously, at the beginning it was more expensive, but with the years, it has been possible to increase these eolic farms all around the planet. And about solar energy, the solar cells, it happened the same. The solar energy market will grow 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. But this hope was exceeded 17 times. And in the year 2019, it exceeded 121 times. So that's a good news for everyone. And this is the gigawatts capacity that we have with solar cells between 1980 and 2019. Now in the year 2019, we have the capacity to produce almost 700 gigawatts. And also another very positive thing that we are facing today is that, for example, in 1976, when these technologies just began, they were much more expensive. For example, the cost of a watt was almost $80. But presently, in the year 2020, the cost per watt is only 20 American cents. So this is hope for everyone. And one good example is Chile, that is having a lot of infrastructure for oil farms and solar farms. This is a phenomenon. Obviously, this is good news for everyone. And more countries all around the world are improving or are reducing the carbon emissions. And Chile is a good example of this. Because the sun is a renewable resource. And also another problem that a lot of companies said is the storage capacity. The storage capacity is increasing presently in gigawatts thanks to the lithium that is being used in the production of um, energy for cars, for homes, for the industry. Energy storage development doubled from 2017 to 2018. You can see this. This is really good news. And manufacturers of cars, of vehicles, obviously they are changing to electric cars because now there is more capacity of storage in the batteries. All these companies are moving to electric vehicles. And now we have in stock 7 million electric cars around the world. This is thanks to that is due to the prices that are coming down. They are being reduced. So can we change? Obviously that we can change. Will we change? Well, let's see. The Paris Agreement, celebrated in the year 2015, invited all the countries around the world to reduce their carbon emissions. And the goal is to reach net zero emissions for the year 2050. This is all a process. This is all a process. We have 30 years to change, to transition to clean energies. So the most countries in the Paris Agreement obviously is going to improve or maybe to stop increasing the global warming that we have. In the present, obviously, the trends, the investments are completely to clean energies. And what's happening with investments in fossil fuel energy is going down. Nobody wants to invest now in fossil fuel energy. For example, in the United States, all these places, Connecticut, California, Massachusetts, North Carolina, New Jersey, Michigan, all of them, they decided to reduce their carbon emission independently from the White House. Now, over 240 global companies have made a commitment to go 100% renewable. So that's good news. All these companies are moving now to clean energies. So what do we have to do? We need to join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices. The voices are us that we need to ask for clean energies to our governments. We need to change the regulation. We need to produce new regulation in order to protect our lives and to have a healthy planet. Their votes, obviously, we need to vote for those who guarantee that are going to transition to clean energies. And their choices, obviously, we individually, as citizens of this planet, we need to change our habits, our consumption habits, but also all the way we are living in the present. We need to be able to change and to get adapted to the new reality that we are facing today. So use your vote, your voice, and your choices. We need to speak the truth to power, like our world depends on it, because in fact, it depends on it. My name is Carmen Alzate, and I'm very thankful because of the time you took in sharing this conversation. For all those who watch this presentation, they need to visit 24hoursofreality.org to sign the open letter urging governments to sign and ratify the Escazú Agreement. The Escazú Agreement is an agreement that um, has the intention to protect the life of activists in all Latin America, because some of them are being killed. So we need laws, we need regulations to protect them, and this Escazú Agreement is one of those. Also, for each one of you that were watching this presentation, you need to go there also, 24hoursofreality.org, and you need to provide some information, because for every person watching this presentation all around the world during 24 hours of reality, they are going to plant a tree in some part of the planet. But you need to go there and register your interest in which these trees are planted. And obviously to have the Escazú Agreement as a successful agreement. I'm very thankful, and I invite you to watch all the presentations that are taking place all around the planet during these 24 hours of reality. Thank you so much for watching it, and go to the webpage in order to register your information in order to get those trees planted. Thank you very much for your help, for your conversation, and for your interest. As Mr. Al Gore told you at the beginning of this presentation, share the conversation, talk to the family, talk to your friends, and spread the awareness of the climate change, because we need to be ready, but we need to act and stop the fossil fuel emissions all around the planet. Thank you so much.